Hi, this is your mortgage guy, Dave Steinberg, and we're here with two great friends of mine, Steve Surratt and David Slater, the founders of CBRG, the College Benefits Research Group. And what I love about these guys and what I love about their business is that they bring an intentionality to helping families navigate the college process. And when I say intentionality, they are experts in both college selection and financing of college education. And so they bring all of that together to help parents of teens who are looking out at a really hard to understand landscape. Hey guys, great to have you on board.
Thank you so much for having us, David. It's
Thank you,
always
Dave.
a pleasure.
So let's start with a simple, I probably mangled it, but what's the mission of CBRG?
Stephen, I'll let you say it.
It's helping students and families navigate the complexities of the college planning process in both financing it and finding the right school. So we like to sum it up as what we want to do is help bring value in achieving the right academic, social, and financial fit for that student and that family in the college planning process.
So let's start with academic fit. How do you go about taking a 15 or 16-year-old and helping them figure out what an academic fit looks like?
So it really depends on the student. Of course, it's getting to know that student and family is something that David and I need to do right away. Okay, we have another partner, and she is our academic specialist, so to speak. That's Janet Lauren. And the three of us pooled our talents and our expertise to really help achieve those three perspectives. So in getting to know the student, some students are very clear with their potential direction, right? They're on a track, like they want to do medicine or biomedical engineering, right? Or they want to do astrophysics, right? We've had a couple of them. Several years ago, Dave, I'm sure you remember, we had one brilliant student, but she wanted to do equestrian studies. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and right, equine studies, and they're very tracked, right? Well, welcome to like 12 schools anywhere that focus in that major, right? So we were all instantly narrowed down in what track, depending on that student. Most students are not on a track. They're somewhat on a path. Some are more directed. Some have absolutely no idea what they want to do, right? What we tell them in because it's true is it's okay not to have a track, and it's discovering your path, and it's allowing your interest, your skills, your values to help lead you on this path, and you'll find your way. Okay, and so that's really what we focus on, is who is this student, what do they care about, what are they good at, and help them navigate and finding positive things that they could both learn and do and experience to help them on this path.
And just to add to that, we are very practical minded. We are practical minded in this process. Too often, students and parents, because it's such a daunting task to pick what you're going to be when you grow up and really know what that is, they sort of punt and kick the can down the road in a way that is not addressing it, right? And Stevens, as he said, we want them to explore and understand, but we want them to explore and understand with an end in mind approach, which means that they should try things. That not like forget it, but like, what if somebody said tomorrow you had to find a job because college is over? What would you want to do? And you're like, well, I don't know. Well, at some point you're going to have to do something. What don't you like to do, right? You got to start thinking, because people don't have a practical way of getting from where they are to where they're going to be going. And college is in the middle there. If you don't really use your if you don't try to address that before you get out of college, you could actually miss all of the opportunities that you have to really be using college to help you there. And so colleges don't necessarily help you in that fashion. They don't say, hey, we're going to give you courses on trying to figure out what you like and what you don't like. They say, here are majors and you could take classes in these areas. And so it's a very uncomfortable situation for anybody to try to define what they want to do in their lives. We try to get them to at least address it as they're going through this thing called college.
So let me just
so it's
touch on
practical.
this really quick. Something tangible, Dave, is that
Sorry.
depending on where we end up with the student, if they really are going to need more support and direction in their major, their potential career path, there's some schools that focus on that are intentional about it, and they're good, right? So like a Tampa University, like a Susquehanna, like a Syracuse, these are all colleges that it's baked into their philosophy to really not just have lots of things to offer, but really work with the students, advise the students, get to know them, challenge them to start to be on this, to focus on what they should be majoring in and where it's going to take them. And you could see that with both their graduation rates and how quick their kids get into their graduate programs or their a job in their career in their major, how fast they get a job out of college, right? These are schools that do a great job in that. Then there's other schools that it's really, they've got amazing resources, but it's really going to be what the student takes advantage of. And so it really depends on the student what that type of academic fit might be. What people mostly think about from academic fit is the ranking of the school, how strong is my student, how impressive are their extracurriculars, what are their standardized test scores, although everyone's kind of bailing on those, which is another whole conversation. But it's really, do I have the numbers? And that's an academic fit. But think about how impersonal all those factors are, right? How much is this factoring in what's really the right fit for the student? Okay.
What I admire about you guys, and we've had this conversation, I don't know how many times over the years, that you guys really have an understanding of probably hundreds of colleges and universities across the country. And you seem to have the team behind you to be able to educate families and students in how to navigate that. So let's start from the beginning. What's the perfect age for someone to enter your program?
Ideally, when they're the CBRG process, it's when their students are either freshmen or sophomores. Okay. If I'd say getting to us earlier is always better. There's not so much we have to work with the student, because it's really just what are they doing, helping them explore what classes, extracurriculars, testing strategies. So the earlier we can get with the student, the more influence we can have, the more coaching we can have. But most of our clients come when their students are sophomores going into junior year or in the beginning of junior year. Okay. Now we do have a rush always going into senior year and even after students have started their senior year. But over the years, we've had to turn most of them away for at least our full comprehensive package, because it's not that we wouldn't even have the time, although that's part of it. We take a certain number of students per grade and that's all we can handle. We're not looking to expand. Okay, we really have as many clients as we need. It's really getting the best clients that are going to get the most out of our service and getting them as early as we can is really our goal. But when families come to us too late, they won't have the time to utilize all our tools, resources, and coaching to get the most out of the process. So it's sad when we have to turn families away, which we do every year, but we need to do a great job for them and for the clients that have hired us. So ideally, it's sophomores going into junior year, because that's when we can really start focusing on the list of schools and really starting to work on concrete path for admissions, etc. From a financial perspective, okay, which is really where David and my background comes in, is it's never too early. Okay, now if families come to us before their kids are in high school, they're probably just going to be a regular financial client, right? We might talk, of course, we're going to talk about college, but we're not necessarily working with the students until they're in high school. So when is that the right time to do that? How about when they're born? They know college is going to be coming at that point. They know that it's a pretty good chance their kids are going to go to college. It's probably a good idea to start planning.
Let's go back to something you said, and you said that certain students are a really good fit for your program. What is the characteristic of the student or the family that makes them a great fit?
I got an answer, but Dave, you want
I'm gonna,
Yeah.
okay, I got, so it's interesting. So Stephen is in our business, is the person who is our gatekeeper. He actually interviews every family that we work with. So he actually stops the process if he can. He's not good at it because he helps everybody, but he tries to evaluate. He'll come in and he says, I can't believe I let these people go through. I just can't believe. He said, I tried to tell them not to work with us, and yet they still work with us. So we do our best due diligence to try to get families who are on board and listen. There are too many families who want to dump and run. They know that there's this thing called college. They've got too many things in their lives to deal with. So they just want to get somebody that's going to take care of it for them. That means take care of their kid as though we're their friggin' parent. Sorry, we're not the parents. The parents are our clients, not the kids. So we need to get parents and students who are looking actively to engage a consulting firm to get what they need best out of the matching process. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be perfect students. We work with some geniuses, and then we work with some people who are not geniuses, and we have spectacular results with both. So it's not the student or the family, it's the presence and who they come as. Is that sort of what you were going to allude to, Stephen?
No, I think it's very well said. It's a matter of expectations, right? So when we put ourselves out there, we say we want to find the right academic, social, and financial fit. We want to help you lower the cost of college, finding the right college, have a realistic college financial game plan, etc. In none of that are we focused on, we're going to help your kids get into Ivy League schools. Right?
Why not?
Because what if it's not right? Okay. So, if I walked into a doctor and I said, I want to be 6'6", I want to play in the NBA. Okay. And he looks at me and he says, well, you're 54 years old, you have bad knees, you have a series of health stuff. Okay. Your eyes aren't as good as they have, and your attitude is all wrong. Okay. I'd rather get the truth, right? I may not want to hear the truth, but that's the job of what that doctor would do. As advisors, we've got to tell the truth. We've got to be realistic. We want to help them achieve the best options possible in a practical sense, in a realistic sense, in a tangible sense. And therefore, we don't want to just limit what we do to try to make us look impressive, right? So we put that when David says, like, I'm the gatekeeper, I am very clear with that. And so if people are looking for advisors to help them get into what their narrow perception of the best schools are, the ones they've heard of, the one that is ranked a certain way in a book by people that never visit colleges, that's who's doing the rankings. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, there's more to it than that. If you want substance, if you want real value, then we can help bring that and help you navigate through it, right? It's not that we're going to make your job easy. We'll show you the path so that it's easily laid out for you. But the student and the parents have to do the work, take the steps, and they're the ones that deserve and achieve the results.
Mm.
Okay. So we're more coaches than we are magicians. People ask us all the time, how do you guys get such amazing results? It's because we're working with things in a realistic way, and we don't waver from that. Now, again, I don't have anything against an Ivy League school if it's right for you. I've had 3 kids, 2 of them actually went, okay, to Ivy League schools. But it's because of what was right for them. And I could bore you with the stories of why each one is, the path each one took.
Yeah.
Right? So
So
that's what we mean by right fit.
and I'm sure that parents are going to want to understand about your services. So I remember my kids going through the college application process, and they had these applications to fill out and the essays and the tests and all of that. Are you involved in that? And if so, how?
So David and I, our background is financial services and retirement planning specialists. That's what we've done for decades, and never with the real intention of being college planners. We became college planners because we had clients that had kids in high school and they needed help. So we were focusing on the financial part. We do it really well. Okay. And how the colleges are going to look at our families financially for both need and merit aid, how much that landscape has changed with the incredible rising cost of college. Now, so many schools are $80,000 a year plus. Okay. How do people navigate that? So we just found this tremendous need that we felt we needed to be better at helping people navigate. What we didn't realize is that once we started to become good on the financial side of things, we really didn't know what we needed to on the admission side, the application side, and the right academic and social fit perspective for the student. Okay, now lots of people put themselves out there. They read books, they visit, they put their own kids through school, and so they think they know all this. Well, that's not how we approach working financially with retirement planning. Okay, we take it very seriously. And so to just kind of wing it and sound like we knew what we were talking about was not something that David and I would ever be okay with. So we really felt we needed to have that substance and depths of expertise on that side of the equation, which is why we partnered with a person named Janet Lauren, who's a certified educational planner. She's been doing this for decades, working directly with students, not on the financial side. She is tremendous. She visits between 50 and 75 schools every single year, all across the country. She understands the admissions process better than probably anyone I've ever met. She counsels college administrators on how they should approach the admissions process. Okay. She's excellent and she loves working with students. And so we partnered with her as part of the 3 main advisors, David, myself, and Janet, to both bring the financial and the academic sides together with the depth and substance we felt we would want for our own kids.
And just so we're clear, Janet, we actually we fell into Janet as Janet fell into us. We were involved with a number of organizations for college planning. And when we went to these meetings, we ironically just hit it off with this person, Janet, never realizing that she was on one side of the equation, which was the college side of picking the schools, doing the applications, doing the essays. And it turned out that she also had an MBA, and but she had come back from the business world and gone into this side of the field because her mother was an expert and a trailblazer in college planning, had been inside, college
She was the
application process.
superintendent of guidance for Westchester County a long time ago. Was Pearl Glassman. She founded Pearl Glassman Consulting. So she
Right.
is a pioneer on the academic and student side of college planning and college consultants.
And
And
wait a
so
second, and what
she just
her
loved it.
mother's, yeah, and what her mother told her, never talk to any clients about money, because if they're hiring you to do this process, they want what is the right fit, and they're not focused on that money part of it. Because if you start focusing on money, it's like, I want to go find my best wedding dress. Let me go to the Five and Dime because I need to focus on money. No, you find the best wedding dress, and then you figure out practically how you're going to afford, and maybe you have to get redone in a different material so that you can make it in budget. So when Janet saw us, she saw somebody that can address what she was told never to go anywhere near. And when we saw her, we were like, oh my God, we don't have any of her experience or focus. And we would love to, but we don't have that background. So literally our chocolate fell into her peanut butter, and we made that commercial. It literally was that cathartic for both of us, because she knows that we're focused on it for the right reasons on our side. And we don't have to think about what she's doing. She can find the right wedding dress for every kid that's out there, because that's all she cares about. And the kids get it. And there's never a conflict of interest, which is really what we wanted when we were trying to find a partner in this.
Great. So, David, what's your superpower in college planning?
I'm an analytic, and I care about what the kids are going to do on the other side. I almost don't care what they go to college for. I want to make sure that they get value out of the experience while they're there. So my passion is communicating to the students that they've got 4 short years to get as much as they can, and they don't have to wait until they get to college to do it. They could start tapping into the alumni before they even get there. And they need to talk to those people and try to figure out what it is that they want to be, so that before they even get into school, they can start to get what they're trying to look for and to get clear about what they want. So by the time they get out of there, somebody says, what do you want to, what are you looking for? They're not going to say, I want to do sports. They could say something like, I want to play third base for an American League team called the Yankees. Well, you know what? You start talking like that, and people start thinking about how they can help you get a job. You come out and say, I want to do sports, and they're like, another kid, a dreamer. It's not that they're a dreamer. They just don't know what they want. How can you help them if they don't know? So it's trying to get students to start thinking practically, and at the same time going to schools. And the privilege that I have, the superpower that I have, is talking real to the kids and the parents, and getting them to see that college is not a destination, it's a step. And so that they should be doing things for the right steps and what they want to do, and that the parents have to come up with a budget that makes sense, and never limit the kid, but tell them what that budget is. Hey, listen, if we have a budget of 40 and you're going to a school that's charging 80, as long as they gave you 40, we're perfect. But we'll never stop you from applying to the $80,000 a year school. If that school says we're only going to give you $1.50, well, they've given you their answer. It's not us that's limiting you, it's the school. Now you find that school that wants you as much as you want them, they're going to give you that 40, and it's going to be a perfect fit. So we want to get our parents and the students on the same page. And we're very fortunate. We work with the right parents and the right students. And over the time that we have with them, we're able to get them in the right mindset. So by the time it comes to the end of the process where they have to choose a school, it's not this. They may be grappling between one or two schools at the end, but it's usually not the focus on money as much as it's the focus on fit. And that's really a privilege when everybody comes away. We revel in our kids' selections, because at the end of the process, we know that they've gone and they've turned over every rock. And when they come through it at the other end, they're happy with their selections.
Now, you guys are financial guys. The other hat you wear is as a financial planner. You help people do retirement planning. how do the two things come together? How does financial planning come together with finding the right college for your kid?
Well,
Stephen, I'll let you start.
college isn't free. There's a cost to college. And what David was just addressing, and I think it's a big superpower of his, is instead of just focusing on cost of college, it's focused on value. Okay, it's the value of the experience and approaching this as an investment of time and money and enrolling the student and even the parents into that reality, right? Because too many students that are coming out of high school and really high achieving students, they're kind of being fed that they're really special and that all these opportunities are going to just be thrown at them and they're going to just be amazing at it, and they're going to have just tremendous opportunities and job opportunities and high paying, and but they're not investing themselves in it, right? And the things that I've learned from my father, okay, was that the hard work you put in is what creates the value. That's why so many lottery winners are miserable, right? It's just a proven fact. If you didn't really do anything for it, you don't value it. And so if you don't, you need to approach this whole process from a value perspective, and then also making sure that you're realistically looking at what you could afford and how it's going to affect what you could do for your kids. What if you have 3 kids? You've got to put them all through. If you're just on autopilot and you're like, listen, you know, my oldest one deserved all the opportunity in the world, and whatever school they go to, I'm going to figure out how to pay for it because that's my job as a parent, right? And they shouldn't have to worry about it. They did their job. Well, if you make those decisions, then you might not be able to offer those same opportunities to your second or third kid if you haven't really realistically budgeted it out, right? And then also, what happens after those quick 4 years, right? What if you have a kid that wants to go into social work and is probably not going to be making a lot of money, but you know it's right for her? Well, maybe you're going to want to be able to help her so that she can go into a career she loves. And maybe another one that's going to go into finance and banking is going to be making huge money, and you're not going to have to help as much, right? And so it's all connected, right? Now, the natural progression is that all these massive financial decisions we're making as we're putting our kids through college is directly tied into what our future is going to look like and retirement. So I think you mentioned before, David, as you mentioned to me many times, begin with the end in mind, right? Okay. So although most people, when they come to us, they're not thinking retirement, we have to be, okay, for them, or we're not doing our job.
You know, I've got to jump in. I had this conversation a couple of years ago with one of my clients, and it was a really fun conversation because he had a daughter, let's say she wanted to be a poet, but she wanted to go to an elite school with crazy tuition. And I said to him, you know, it's going to cost you $300,000. Why don't you offer her that instead of paying $300,000 in tuition, you'll give her a $300,000 nest egg if she goes to the state school? I don't know where it went, but it was a fun conversation.
David, one of the conversations that we have with the parents, my first financial meeting, has a conversation about budget. And I say to them the same thing. I said, if you sent your kid to the mall and you gave them a credit card and say, go buy a shirt for up to $100, they're going to find a shirt that's up to $99.99, right? Whatever it is. If you hand that same student a $100 bill and say, hey, go buy a shirt at the mall, and whatever you don't spend, you get to keep. Watch the whole thought process change, which is why we were going through this. We have to take away that the parent's job is to fund college. No, the parent's job is part of the student to try to help them get wherever they're going to go. And I think and by the way, I laugh because Stephen's son is my example that I use for every kid. I tell them that when they're coming into school, I said, Stephen's son had the opportunity to go to a state school free ride, Michigan State, for the first year. And then the opportunity to go to Cornell for the second year to go to the ILR program. And I'll never forget that his son, Jay, came into my office after he'd gone through his first year. And he started to hyperventilate in my office. And I'm like, what's going on, Jay? He says, I'm going to have to take on debt because he was on a free ride to go to Michigan State at the time of his life.
Not even just a free ride. He went in with his AP credits. He was a sophomore. He was going to get a master's degree in accounting in 4 years for free.
Yeah, I mean, please. So he comes to me and he starts hyperventilating in my office. I'm like, Jay, what's going on? He says, I'm going to have to take on debt. I said, Jay, you told me when you went to Cornell that you couldn't wait. Like you went with your parents. They allowed you to shadow to go.
David, let's rewind 60 seconds. Did he go to Cornell? Because you were saying he went to Michigan State.
For a year.
Went to Michigan for a year, and then he chose to go to Cornell for the second. But he was in between those. He was figuring it out, and he was grappling with, was it worth taking on the debt? And I said to Jay very clearly, make it worth it. If you're going to go there, you're telling me it's the place for you. You feel alive there. The kid ended up getting a higher GPA in an Ivy League school, shining and taking over the entire debate club and going all over the world. He did more in those last 3 years at Cornell than he could have ever done at Michigan State. And it was the right place for him to expand and grow. We want our students to use the school.
Flip side to that is that instead of having the money we budgeted to help him pay for grad school, right? We spent it on his undergrad, and he came out with some debt that he's paying off, right? But he made the choice and he made it worth it. So it's not always just lowering the cost of college, it's managing the cost of college in a realistic way.
And he saw that as a challenge because that's the way I created it in his head. So whether or not he remembers that or not, but I threw it out there to say, make it worth it. If you're going to do it, not it's going to be an Ivy League school. Of course it's worth it. No. Jay made it worth it. And he got everything out of that school. I don't think there was a minute that he didn't think and be getting. I mean, there are people who went to Ivy League schools, didn't get a third of what he got out of that experience.
Right. Just because it's Ivy League, you still got the drunken morons that, are trudging through and cheating their way through exams, right? Because they just feel they're entitled. That is not the way my son went through this experience. Okay, he earned everything. And now that he's out in the workforce and doing well, he's at Deloitte. He makes good money. He's thriving there, and he's doing important work in government consulting. And it's wonderful to see. Right?
Cool.
I mean, there's never any guarantees, but what we're trying to do is help bring our families through this in a way that they're experiencing it. Okay, so one of the things you asked David what his superpower is, okay, and I think it's the value proposition of college. I think what my superpower is making sure that everyone owns their own experience when they work with us.
Excuse me. Let's switch gears because generally what I like to focus on is how your expertise impacts on finances and home ownership. And tell us a couple of stories. Maybe David, you start first. Tell us a story of a family that was that you had to counsel through financially, that maybe they came up with a budget and it was 200,000 or 300,000, whatever the budget was, and now they had to pay for it, and how that was done from a financial perspective.
So we are in the business of, as Stephen said, figuring out value and also cash flow. When you think about retirement income planning, it's all about how do you live on what you have and how do you make that last, right? Well, when you're talking about college, it's the same thing. How do you afford it? Well, how do you fund it? Well, parents have a certain amount of budget that they can afford. There are funding vehicles that are from the government that you can take with loans that are going to be available, and those loans are deferred. So you don't have to pay anything back until 6 months after the student stops going to school. Notice I didn't say graduates. 6 months after the student stops going to school. So if they stop going to school on more than a half-time basis, they have to start paying that back, whether or not it is that they quit or they go on to graduate school and they have to defer them longer. So parents don't necessarily have to come up with all the funds. But the last thing we want is for a parent to have to come out of pocket more than they can and to go into financial ruin because they can't afford the monthly payments. So whether or not we're taking money out of real estate, whether or not we're doing a refinance or a home equity line of credit, whether or not we're doing loans from the government or loans from the state or loans privately or intra-family loans, it all has to be with how much can we afford right now on a monthly basis to fund college? And when the student stops going to school, how much can we afford at that point? And if that amount is the same, then we want the amount that's going to be for servicing the debt to be part of that conversation so that there's not going to be a trip up later on because, oh yeah, we have to retire. How do we retire and how do we make that? So the one thing I will tell you that we had a story about a family that came to us after, not during, but after they'd already amassed debt, they had failed. They didn't have us beforehand. And we had to coach them and figure out how they were going to be able to retire and service the debt that had gotten out of control, because at 8% or 9%, things double in X number of years. It's not a surprise. So they had $800,000 of debt, and their kids didn't know that the debt was there, college debt, but they owned it, and we had to figure out. So we are very present to this as our mission of how to get people to be able to afford college. It's how do you cash flow it so that you can afford it during and after and be able to pay it off so that you will not be financially in ruins later on. That's my story.
And Steve, I know that over the years we've worked together serving a number of older clients. Let's move away from the college benefit part to your financial planning part. And what I'm seeing today is people in their 60s that are getting caught up in the economy. You know, we've just come through 3 years of COVID, pretty much. We're in an economy where, frankly, market returns have been tough for the last year. We're in an economy that people are getting downsized. The companies are downsizing, and some older employees, particularly, are losing their job. How do we counsel, let's say, someone who's 60 or 62 or 64, and they just got that pink slip?
Man, that's a tough question, because there's so many factors that I have to know before I could really advise someone, right? But what we're really focused on first is cash flow, right? People focus on rates of return, tax rates, interest rates, all that, market fluctuation, right? Inflation, all of them are important, but it all comes after how are they living from their cash flow perspective.
One of my buddies says that people lead a life of cash flow and they don't know it.
Yes, no question. They're focused on there's so many that reading books about where to put their money, crypto and this and that. And I'm saying you better build a plan that's resistant and flexible. And my father-in-law is actually my mentor in this profession. He happens to be David's as well. His name was Hy Eisenstein, and he was a great man. Okay, bless his soul.
I can attest to that. I remember him well.
And I remember early on him drawing on a piece of paper boxes. Okay, we still do this, you know,
Yes.
we still do. Okay, we never plan on it, but it just like we're trying to explain something to a client, and all of a sudden we're drawing boxes again, right? And these boxes represent not just different investments, but really different asset classes that do different things, right? So you have your stock market, your equities, okay, and you can have your bonds, and you have your real estate, right? And these are what people normally think of as those are my asset classes, right? But then you also have cash value life insurance, and then you have your debt, your mortgages, right, and other types of debt. Okay, and he professed that you really needed to have all these areas where you were building your retirement nest egg, because when you need to turn these into income, you don't know what the world will look like, right? So if the market is doing phenomenal, right, and it's been doing phenomenal the last 5 years, and all the analysts say it's still going, that's probably a good time for you to start taking your income from your equity portfolio, right? Especially if capital rates are low or if income taxes are low relatively, right? But what happens when the market's down, right, and inflation is way up, okay, tax rates are going up, maybe you want to take money out of maybe your bond portfolio or your cash value life insurance, okay, or maybe even your home equity, okay, if interest rates are still low. I wouldn't do that now, but depending on what the conditions are, you want to take something that's not correlated to those other things that exist, so that you're not taking money from a depreciating asset like an equity portfolio, right? And when you look at how sequence of returns really affect your overall return, not just your average rate of return, it's your real returns. When the market's going down and people are taking money out of their retirement portfolio, they just saw that what they thought was going to last them 30 years of retirement isn't going to last them 15, right? Because they didn't asset allocate properly, right? So if I'm sitting down with somebody who just lost their job, first and foremost, we're going to look at cash flow. How are they living? Are they okay? Are they headed for imminent disaster? Do we have to make big changes in their cash flow? Downsizing, refinancing, okay, debt restructuring, right? The example that David gave before, they actually did loan modifications to really lower their monthly amount that they had to pay to service that college debt. It changed their lives. Okay, they were almost $2,500 less a month in required cash flow after we worked with them than beforehand. We changed their whole life. I mean, it wasn't. It was our counsel. They did it. They owned it. But I'm just saying that we work together to achieve this. Okay, so it's cash flow first and foremost. It's allocating their assets in a way that's not just your typical way of looking at things, but really things that you could adapt to in an ever fluctuating world of tax rate changes, market fluctuation, unemployment, what else, Dave? Okay, planned
You have
obsolescence, right? All the,
technological change, interest rate fluctuation, market rate fluctuation, all of the unknowns, the propensity to consume. We call those the eroding factors. We didn't create that. Bob Castellone did. But the fact is that we look at those, and to Stephen's point, a lot of what we do now is with people that are in retirement is where are they going to get their cash flow and where is their liquidity? Because it's not just their cash flow, it's they have to have a cushion that they feel comfortable with. So it's a lot of different things that we're working with. And if they're over the age of 59 and a half, it's a little different because now they have access to funds that were in retirement, or they can put things into annuity products that they won't get penalized when they go to take the funds out of. Otherwise, you have to play that game also, which is how do we get to funds? Because otherwise we're going to get a penalty and a tax on things that are coming out. So there's a lot of
just to add from my perspective, one of the tools that I've been working with now is reverse mortgages, and it's something that people have not focused on. Frankly, it has a bad rap out there on the street, but for someone in their young 60s who needs to bridge, let's say from young 60s to late 60s, a reverse mortgage might be a great solution. And you've got to look at every arrow quiver.
Right. And there's also a line of credit that you can get once you're over age 62. That is it's like a reverse mortgage line of credit that grows as opposed to going and just taking the actual debt. What people also have to be mindful of is Social Security. Too many people are limited in their mindset and they think, well, I just want to start to take my Social Security early, when if they can delay it until age 70, first of all, it increases the amount, but it also increases for their spouse, because God forbid that they pass, then that's left with increases for cost of living. So using a line of credit or using a reverse mortgage to allow a person to delay the withdrawals of their Social Security until age 70 is a big deal that we have to also incorporate, because there are very few things that as you get to retirement are guaranteed. Well, I can tell you one of them is inflation is pretty much a guarantee we're going to have. And if you are on a fixed income that never changes and your income stays what it is, but the costs of goods and sold that you're going to need are going up, you're going to run out of money. And that's something that you have to be also mindful of. So there are a lot of things that we have to deal with, and it's not an easy start or finish, but real estate and those, as you said, the reverse mortgage and the home equity line of credit, that's from I don't know what they call it. It's not called a regular line.
It's part of it's a home it's a reverse mortgage. It's just a different way of taking the draw out of that reverse mortgage.
Right.
So can I touch on one
Sure.
thing real quick, Dan? Dave? So I'm working, I actually later on today, I have an appointment in an attorney's office with a client, and tragically her husband is about 14 years older than her, and he suffered a
stroke.
No. It wasn't a stroke. He had to go through an operation, and he got bad infections, and he's now in a facility, and it's caused like certain cognitive issues, and really the prognosis is troubling. Okay. Now he was still actively working before he got sick, right? And they had gone through a lot of financial troubles in the past, and they don't have a huge nest egg, But now he's in a facility, which it could be a long time that he's going to need this non-skilled care, which is $13,000 a month now for the facility, right? Well, for Medicaid planning, and that's what they're working with the attorney with, you've got to spend down all your assets almost to nothing, right? There's certain protected assets. One of them is your primary residence. Okay. So they have a house. It's too much for her to take care of. So she's looking at buying another place. And she was looking at buying a place for, less money. She wants it to be in a certain area, because she's got her own life there. Right. And my suggestion is maybe she wants to buy the bigger unit. It's about $120,000 more. Right. She says, why would I want to do that? I said, because as long as your husband's in the facility, you're going to have to spend down all your assets anyway. But if you buy the bigger unit, it doesn't count against you. She says, but how am I going to afford it? I said, well, you could always look to a reverse mortgage because it's your money in there. You're allowed to take the money. It's not income, right? It doesn't count against you, and it doesn't count against you for Medicaid planning, right? And even the attorney, he had first given me a little bit of pushback. He says, I don't like reverse mortgages because they don't take the time to understand them. Okay. Like any other tool. Yeah, sure. Sometimes they're not right, but sometimes they're right. Okay. So don't just discount it because of something you think or read. Right. And this way it at the very least buys her time as she figures out, as we see what happens to him health-wise. If he recovers, God willing, they could always sell the house. They could always downsize later on, but at least now they're protecting more of her wealth for her benefit that she's going to need in the future, right? And so that's just came to mind because of just what you brought up about reverse mortgages, that it really could be used in a lot of different ways to help manage things, not just from a bridge perspective, certainly, but also from even Medicaid planning perspective and other things like that.
So we've been talking to Steve Surratt and David Slater of College Benefit Research Group. What I love about you guys is the integrity and the passion that you bring to the table. And for my friends out there, if you've got a teenager who's looking out at the college horizon, these guys have such wisdom. They have such they have integrity to point you in the right direction, and wisdom to be able to inform you as to how that will play out for you and your family. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
for having us, David.
It's an honor to speak with you, and it's always an honor to refer people to you. Okay, because whenever David and I do that, we say we're referring you to somebody who has as much integrity, if not more, than anyone you're going to meet. Okay,
But
people doing the right job for the right reasons, that is you.
Thank you.
And I have to second that for a couple of reasons. One of which was my parents, who I've had the privilege of having David work with multiple times. And one of the things that David found in a piece of real estate that my parents owned was that there was, it wasn't a clear slate as what the title looked like, even though it was a condo a co-op rather in New York City. And he actually helped engage an attorney to clean this up, because he said, this is going to be a problem for you later on. Now, this has nothing to do with what he was engaged for. He was engaged for refinancing what they were doing. When he came across something that didn't look kosher, his first reaction was not to push it down to somebody else's and say, that ain't my job. It's saying, no, you don't want this to be out there. Whatever it's going to cost, let's clean it up. And he took care of it. And David, I'll say that we are kindred spirits. That's the way we go about our jobs. but it's not surprising that we gravitate towards people like yourself to give people the opportunity to have somebody that's going to take care of them, because we want them to be taken care of.